And the other one are called the four immeasurables, the four immeasurable thoughts. And if Shir could bring them up on the screen, so we can recite it all together. So you recite it wherever you are. And just to say 2 or 3 words about refuge, not to say much, but it's often misunderstood, but it's basically just reminding ourselves that we're entrusting, or we're seeking advice, if you like, basically from what's called the Dharma. So to entrust ourselves, to rely upon it. And this is used, well, in the same way as we rely on certain things throughout our day to deal with problems, to deal with difficulties, or just to be able to live life, basically. We entrust ourselves to our family, our friends, maybe to watch a good movie, anything that helps us to cope. Now here, taking refuge means you entrust yourself into what's called the Dharma. Okay, there's another prayer here, the refuge prayer first. That's the four immeasurable thoughts. Yes, that's it. Yeah, great, that one first. So here, we're just saying I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, until I'm awakened, until I've touched, or until I was able to remove whatever is in the way to bring out the greatest potential of my own mind. And for the time being, until I reach that state, I go for refuge mainly to the Dharma, to Buddhist psychology, in order to find solutions to whatever situation I face in the Dharma. I can still take refuge in my friends, in my family, in other objects, but in order to attain an enlightened state, to generate the wisdom that is described in particular here in the Heart Sutra, and to reach the awakened state of Buddha, for that I trust myself in the Dharma and to the person who taught it, the Buddha, and the Supreme Assembly, that is the Sangha, who are also practicing like myself. But then even more important, having done that, having reminded myself by reciting this 3 times to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but also whatever positive actions I engage in, so whatever accumulations of merits by practicing generosity, ethical conduct, patience, and so forth, may that become a cause for me to become fully awakened, to become a Buddha, to benefit all sentient beings. So that's the motivation we should generate here together. And whichever level of refuge you take, there's so many different levels of taking refuge, it doesn't matter, just do whatever you can to kind of basically have the thought, until I've transformed my mind, I entrust myself into whatever teachings are beneficial to me, and I do so in order to become fully awakened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So let's do this together 3 times. Okay, so I'll be the Umse, the chanting person, the chanting master. Okay, all right, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, great. So having generated, well, first refuge, and after that bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, how do we go about it? How do we become Buddhas? How do we actually awaken our mind? Well, most important, is great compassion, great love for sentient beings. And symbolic for that is our wish to bring forth happiness of sentient beings. May they be free from suffering. May they experience equanimity and so forth. So the 4 immeasurable thoughts. So in the back of your mind, still having refuge and bodhicitta in the back of your mind, not letting go of that, we then recite together the 4 immeasurable thoughts to really think from the depth of your heart. In particular, at these difficult times, may each and every sentient being have happiness and so forth. Okay, so to really feel it from deep within. Okay, with this, let's recite this together. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So let's just take a moment to let these words sink in and to really reflect on them. That we're doing this here, this session, not just for our own benefit, but also for the benefit of all sentient beings, of all animals, all humans, all form of life. To think, may my listening to these words by the Buddha, the Heart Sutra, become the cause for me to be fully awakened, to be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings. Okay. All right, so let's start the lecture or this class. Well, just before I sat down to get ready, I saw that Leora sent me a message about how to go about questions, and I responded. I sent her a message back, but I don't think she had time to answer. But my suggestion was, if there are a lot of questions, well, we don't have that much time. But since we have a WhatsApp group, people could maybe post their questions there. So I could look at them, I could address them, I could answer them. Well, first listen to them and then address them here in this coming together on Zoom, or maybe we find another way. But I could answer them in the WhatsApp group. Let's just see how many questions there are. The other suggestion was that people raise their hands. I guess that's somehow possible. You need to press somewhere, so you virtually raise your hand, and then Shir can see it, and you get the chance to ask a question. That's how we did it last time. We could also try that. So we're still experimenting a little bit with this new media of having a class. So let's see how it goes. If there are not that many questions, it may be easy. We can also write questions in Zoom. Okay, that would also work. Tomet wrote, yeah, we could also write questions in Zoom. Great. We just need to see how many questions there really are. Maybe there aren't that many. But also what I've done is I've gone through the material again. I renamed many of the files because they were a little difficult to find. Sometimes I put numbers to them, but I also took the Heart Sutra. The translation that I use is by Venerable George Churnoff, a very venerable elderly monk who's yeah, I think he's done a really good job in making the translation, doing the translation, and so I kept that. Also, what Lamas of Rinpoche recommended, and other lamas have used, other people have used. So I'm using that, but it doesn't have the title in Sanskrit, in the Sanskrit language, or in the Indian language, and then in Tibetan. So this is mentioned in the commentaries, but since it's not there, I added it, and plus the homage by the translators, I added that, and that's it. The rest is exactly the same. Plus, I took the outlines from the different commentaries. So actually the Heart Sutra in the commentaries, it's explained by adding titles to each outline. So you have outlines, different sections, and then they're given names. This is this part, this is this part, this is this part. So I took the whole Heart Sutra and just added all these titles, outlines. This is the first by the second. The second has this many divisions. So you also find that in the material. Maybe it's not available right now to you. I don't know. I was working on it today, and then I sent it when I was done. It was 3-4 o'clock, but maybe for the next time you'll find it on the website. So it's called The Outlines of the Heart Sutra. Okay. And I'll use this today. Shear's got it. It's number, put numbers to them, number 3. It says number 3. So that's the outlines. If you could show it on the screen. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, outlines of the heart. Yeah. All right, so you see the bold letters, those are the outlines, and the rest is the Heart Sutra in the same way as it's, as I put it together in a different file where the outlines are missing. Okay, so now just to start again to address maybe the situation a little bit. I mean, you've had a whole week, you've had a long time to think about it, and speaking to Leora has been helpful. I asked her to update me about what's happening in Israel. So it's pretty similar to what is happening anywhere, I guess, everywhere. Very similar problems. Of course, fear. Fear is one of the major problems. It's a very stressful emotion that can be very paralyzing, can be very difficult to deal with, and make it very hard to live our life. But there's so much with this situation. There's so much with it. And I don't know, I keep thinking about it all day long. It comes up. And of course, being in a situation where you can't go out, there's so much time to reflect on it. But what's so interesting is with the coronavirus, what really struck me is, first of all, well, and you all know this, it's been mentioned on TV and in the radio, it does not discriminate. It does not discriminate between anyone, rich, poor, no matter what ethnicity, what culture. So it's like everyone is equally affected by this. This is really interesting. So we call that the enemy. Well, right now it's this tiny living being, which actually doesn't want to harm us at all. In fact, if it kills us, it will die itself. So our survival is in the interest of this particular, I don't know, yeah, well, living being, yes, this virus, I don't know whether it's a sentient being, but it's something that is alive. And so there is no actual enemy as such, but there's something, of course, that we're scared of, that we're afraid of in terms of getting sick, ourselves getting sick and dying, of loved ones getting sick and dying. So it's really, really scary. And something so amazing has happened. Something so tiny has brought the world down to its knees in a very short time, actually. So that being the case, nonetheless, it gives so many opportunities, definitely for the practice of love and compassion. So many opportunities. Why? Because so far, when I hear about other countries, about people in different cultures, I don't know much about these cultures. I don't know about these problems. I can much more identify with people from my own cultural background, people who had a similar upbringing, because I kind of know what they go through. So the more I know about a certain culture, the more I can identify with it. And the easier it gets to put yourself into that person's shoe and then understand the difficulties and to generate the wish, may they be free from those problems and difficulties, which by definition is compassion. Compassion is a feeling of closeness towards another being, feeling of affection towards another being, and wanting this person to be free from their problems, their difficulties, their suffering. That's the definition of compassion. It's a state of mind, and out of that state of mind, we then act in a compassionate way, depending on the strength of this compassion. If it's not strong enough, we may just feel strong compassion, but never do anything about this problem that the other person faces. But with Corona, with this situation right now, we basically know that no matter where people come from, what cultural background they have, what religion they have, right now, everything that was a problem to them, was difficult to them previously, has gone, it's going to be moved to a back burner. It's moved to the back, and they're all scared of getting sick, dying, their loved ones getting sick, dying, losing their existence, losing their way of life, very similar to what we all experience. So in a way, everyone in this world is experiencing something very similar. And I'm pretty sure, and of course, not just the fear but also the problem of being locked in, not being able to go out, not meeting your friends, all these problems that come along with this. So it's so much easier in a way to put ourselves into the shoes of all these people far away in different cultures. And it also makes it easier, I find, to practice compassion, because there's this closeness, something we have in common. Of course, we all have in common to be happy and not to suffer, but it's kind of, it doesn't feel the same way as the situation right now, because it's new to us. So since it's new, it brings forth emotions that are quite different. So it's such a great opportunity to think of people in other places. And also right now, whatever problems we have, I don't think it is as bad as, for instance, in India right now. I mean, I follow, of course, the news in India, and it's terrible what's happening in some places. The food supply is collapsing. People don't have enough food. They don't have money to buy any food. The truck drivers can't buy any food on the side of the road because all the little dabas, the little food places, they're closed. They can't go to the stores. I mean, it's just in Western countries such as Israel and Europe, the United States, it's so much easier. So again, to also compare our own situation, of course, with those people, and to really meditate on it when things get too bad, but it could be worse, and to take into consideration, well, dependent arising, it could be so much worse. But also, what is so beautiful, and Nero told me about this, and this is of course happening also in other places, that so many people become very inventive to help other people. They're going out of their way. I hear from Leora, young people going out of their way, trying to help, and being very creative in what they do. So it brings a lot of good things in us. I mean, it brings the best in us. And a lot of people, it brings out the best. In a lot of people, it brings out, of course, also negative things. But the thing is that facing problems can bring out more love, more compassion. And if we don't face any problems, when things go very smoothly, well, we become complacent. We don't use our intelligence, our creativity in the same way. So in a way, this may change. Of course, this will change everything. This will change the world, of course, in a big way. But who knows? It could be so much better in so many ways. And I don't need to go into this. I'm sure you're aware of the environmental repercussions of what's going on right now, that there's less pollution, etc. Of course, hopefully we also learn from the mistakes we've made. Anyway, I'm pretty sure you have ways of reflecting on that. And of course, this doesn't relate directly to what we're studying here, the Heart Sutra, but in a way, well, it does relate, because the Heart Sutra is all about wisdom, about understanding. So wisdom is a consciousness. It's a type of mind or consciousness, using those words interchangeably. And from a Buddhist point of view, our mind can be our best friend and it can be our worst enemy. So when we talk about something that really harms me, corona or another person, another country, whatever, well, mainly what harms me personally is my own mind. Nothing can harm me more than my own mind, but of course nothing can benefit me more than my own mind either. So the idea that, of course, our mind is always with us all day long. We say, of course, we look after our body, we look after our house, we look after our garden, we look after our family, but they're not always with us. What is always with us is our own mind. So our body, even when we're asleep, well, when we're asleep, okay, our body is with us, but when that, for us in that moment, it's not there, in the sense that our mind has no awareness of it. It's sleeping, it's dreaming about being something else altogether. So it's an awareness of a totally different body if you dream you're an elephant or whatever. So therefore, our mind is the one thing that is always with you, one thing that's always with us, our mind. And happiness and suffering are basically an interpretation of our own mind, because otherwise every negative situation would be seen by everyone the same way. If it was suffering in and of itself, if there were suffering really living, being outside of us, if it hadn't to do with the way we perceive it as being negative or positive, etc. And we'll come to this. This is so much part of the Heart Sutra. But that being the case, if our mind is, well, can be our best friend, can be our worst enemy, it is so essential to know our own mind, to get to know our own mind. And the only way we get to know our own mind is to observe it. And this is where one of the basic functions of the mind, the basic techniques, mental techniques, comes into play, which is mindfulness. Mindfulness, it's the basis of everything. In Tibetan Buddhism, it is not discussed in the same way as in other traditions, as for instance in the Thai tradition, the Burmese tradition, but it's just as big and just as important, and in the same way the foundation of all meditations. So mindfulness, which basically are three functions: the function of introspection, of attentiveness, and of remembering what I want to pay attention to. So those are three mental functions put together in the word mindfulness. And mindfulness of our own awareness, of our own mind, that, of course, when we hear the word introspection, it doesn't mean so much mindfulness of your body. Yes, of course, that's also a huge part, but the main part is mindfulness of our own mind. And last time I talked about the Heart Sutra deals with fearlessness, wisdom versus fear. But what does that actually mean? It's so easily said, oh, well, the Heart Sutra helps us with our fears. But that can be greatly misunderstood. It's not saying you recite it once and your fear is gone. That's just not going to happen. Or I just don't think about my fear. I just repress it and instead just think of the Heart Sutra, so in that way I don't experience fear. No way, it's not going to work. It's going to be like the pressure cooker when you block the valve. At some point it'll come through even stronger. No, instead it deals with facing our own fears. First of all, getting to know our own fears. So if we experience fear, for instance, and at this point in time, that's something we may experience again and again, listening to the news, hearing about friends and family, hearing about how many people have died, etc. I mean, right now, there's a lot more bad news than positive ones. And to watch our own mind, does fear arise? Just what happens? What happens? What's my reaction? And just allowing it to arise in the sense, not pushing it away out of fear, but rather to allow for it to arise and to just watch it. So to watch our own fear, to not identify with our own fear. And that is also a huge part, of course, in Buddhist practice, to understand that I'm not my mind, that I'm not my thoughts. Oftentimes we think I'm my thoughts, I'm my fear, I'm my anger. We identify with this really strongly. But no, to know that it's my thoughts, it's my mind. So there's something more. There's more than just this particular mind, this particular thought, this particular emotion. So I'm not this thought, I'm not that mind. And therefore we can actually watch the thoughts that arise in our mental continuum, watch them with a sense of curiosity, acceptance, and a sense of humor. That really helps. I remember Jitsuma Denzen Pamu once said she thinks they should add one paramita, one to the 6 perfections. You should add the 7th perfection of humor. Very, very clever thing to say. Because humor is so important. Because if we take ourselves too seriously, if we believe, if we are very serious about what we do, if we look at our own mind, we'll probably just get depressed at all the weird thoughts that arise. But if instead we deal with it with humor, then there's a lightness that comes in. We're more relaxed, we're more at ease. And in that way, this uptightness doesn't set in, which leads to frustration and maybe more fear and anger, etc. So meditation, which in the case of mindfulness, in particular, mindfulness of our own mind, and we have a lot of time right now. I mean, if we can't go out, we're in a lockdown situation, we can't do as much as we usually do, we have the opportunity to look inside. We have a lot more time. So that's such a great opportunity in the sense that usually we don't get that time. We're so busy with all the material things. We're so busy with all the external stuff that we don't get the time to look inwards. But our problems, our difficulties, our self-doubts, fear, etc., it all comes from the mind. So unless we deal with the mind, everything else is just like taking a sleeping pill. I'm fearful, well, I get distracted to do this and to do that, do something else. So the best way is just to face it, but to face it with a very relaxed mind. So being mindful and focused does not mean you're uptight, but rather it means you're relaxed. So relaxed, this the state of being relaxed, well, that comes about through humor, for instance. But also to work on compassion, on love, etc. And just the other day, these days, I don't have kids. I don't have to take care of things in the same way as my family does. So I volunteered to do the shopping. So my brother, his wife has some heart conditions, so they're afraid that she gets infected, that she may get sick. So they don't go out, and I go shopping for them. And I go to the store that I usually don't go to because they really like a lot of meat and they like snacks and stuff. So I usually go there. Now I go there. I've gone there a few times, and it's really beautiful that there's this voice all the time. All the time there's this lady. Every 5 minutes she says it. She says, right now, this is a difficult time. We need to think that we're all in this together and to help each other. So she says it again and again. It's like a guided meditation because you can't talk to anyone. You're supposed to avoid everyone with your shopping cart. It's almost like you're keeping everyone away from you. So then people sometimes get a little, of course, uptight. Toilet paper just arrived and everyone is racing, or I don't know, whatever. Something is it's not there, it's not much there, or people want to get through quickly, and you can feel sometimes a bit of aggression. And then this voice all the time saying it again and again, these words. I personally found them so helpful just to remind me of compassion, remind me of love. So I thought it was a great idea just to get people back to love, compassion. And so we should actually do that by way of mindfulness. So to watch our own mind, watch our own fears, face our own fears, but at the same time, also not forget other sentient beings, to do this for other sentient beings, not just for ourselves, but also for others. That hopefully facing our fears, lessening them, replacing them with other positive emotions helps us to inspire others, be a better friend to others, be a better example to others, and therefore benefit others and maybe also teach them, etc. So benefit them in such a way. But going back to the sutra, of course, well, this sutra in particular does not just deal with mindfulness. Well, in a way it does, of course, it's all implied, it's all part of this, but it more specifically deals with the understanding of reality. In fact, when I earlier talked about taking refuge in the Dharma, well, Dharma has many different meanings. It can mean to protect, it can mean to transform, but it also has the meaning of existence, of reality. So reality is that which exists. It is that that which exists. That's the way how it is. I mean, like, there are things we think about, they don't exist, and then there are things we think about, they do exist. Now, wisdom is this type of mind that perceives things that do exist, which takes me to saying a few words about the mind, because without an understanding of the mind, it's really difficult to understand what wisdom is, what love is, what compassion is. And of course, you need to spend some time, if you have the time, to learn about mind, consciousness. There are different courses, there are different books on that. But for me, what I find easiest to understand, that the mind is an entity, non-physical entity, an entity that experiences, that perceives, that is aware. Just that we call the mind. So it's not the brain. The brain facilitates the awareness, it facilitates the experience, but on the physical level. But just that awareness aspect, that aspect of being aware, of perceiving something, of experiencing something, that is what we call mind. So it's an entity that does something with an object. So it does something, you could call it an agent, that has an object that it does something with. So it always has an object. Our mind always has some object that it thinks about, that it perceives, that it experiences, that it possibly categorizes, that it doubts, that it misperceives. So there's always something there. There's always an object there. And even when you meditate, unless you do a very specific meditation where you try to just clear the mind from all objects and focus on some kind of nothingness, which is also a valid meditation, which can be done for different reasons. So even with this kind of meditation, well, except for that meditation, there's always an object there. Now, we distinguish between a mind being valid, being helpful, versus a mind that is harmful, usually from the point of view of its object existing or not. In the sense that if I, without knowing, perceive something, believing it exists, and I actively apprehend it, although it doesn't exist, that is by definition called a misapprehension, or even called ignorance, in particular when it comes to not a sense consciousness, but a mental consciousness. So in that case, when I apprehend this wrongly, that potentially gives rise to emotions that can harm me, such as anger, attachment, jealousy, and so forth. So therefore, a mind is potentially harmful when it doesn't perceive things the way they are, when it perceives that which actually harms me to be beneficial. That would be an example of something. I perceive something as beneficial when in actuality it harms me. I perceive something as permanent and solid, while in actuality it's not. So to give you the example of the present situation, if I perceive the situation as a solid and permanent problem, well, that misperception leads to the emotion of fear, leads to the emotion of possibly anger. It leads to an exaggerated emotional response. Why? Because I misperceive, I misapprehend a particular object. That is the situation right now. I perceive it to be permanent, solid, in and of itself, possibly existent. I see it in a way, and that will be addressed here, in a way in which it cannot possibly exist. And we'll get into this as we go through the Heart Sutra. So this is why this sutra is so important, because it talks about how do phenomena really exist? What is their actual way in which what exists and what doesn't exist, in other words. So it deals with that in particular on a very deep level. I mean, this is one of the most difficult sutras. It's very popular, but if you're interested in what Buddhism has to offer, well, just don't leave it at that. There's a lot more that needs to be learned, say, namely about the mind, about how the mind works, what are the negative emotions, the positive ones, what is mindfulness, etc. And that we won't have time to address, at least not in any detail. So here we're dealing with a particular sutra, and I would like to ask you, as part of this particular, whatever you want to call it, this particular time where we come together every Sunday evening, to also bring the sutra into your daily life and to make a practice from it. If you can, possibly if you recite like in the morning, it's good to do this early in the morning because it influences your entire day, you're fresh, etc. So to start your day with a little practice, that brings in the Heart Sutra. So if you do already some practice every morning, to specifically focus also on the Heart Sutra, and whatever you've learned during our sessions here, to bring that in and apply this. Okay. So as like a little commitment, if you like, every morning you do the Heart Sutra. If you can manage, do it in the evening again. But in particular in the morning. So to do your meditation, but to do your meditation also on this, because the Heart Sutra is actually a kind of meditation. It's like a guided meditation. And this will become clear. I mean, in the very beginning, you have a visualization there. There's this aspect of the visualization. And then, of course, there's the whole idea of emptiness, the ultimate nature of phenomena. It's described in particular with these words: form is empty, emptiness is form, and so forth. These four, what I call four profundities, they're also part in the heart, on the outlines. You'll see it as when we get there. That's basically the essence of it, the essence of the essence. The essence of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. All right. So last time I said a little bit about this sutra, and I'm not sure I left out a few things. I could have. But basically, I spoke about the Buddha teaching 3 bodies, basically, called wheels. So the first wheel, the second wheel, and the third wheel. I mentioned those. So when you take all the Buddhist teachings, there are different ways of dividing them, of categorizing them. It's very difficult because there's so many teachings. The Buddha gave so many teachings, and many of them were not recorded. Many of them were written down, but many of them were not recorded, were not written down. Were possibly just passed down orally without anyone writing them ever down, until at some point the last person who knew this teaching had died and had not passed it on. But the most essential teachings, of course, were written down. But nonetheless, so we have these 3 wheels. 3 wheels. Wheel, why wheel? It has to do with some idea that there is this mystical idea of this universal emperor. This idea that there have been in the past these beings who were like universal emperors, in the sense that they have this incredible wisdom and understanding, not necessarily to do with anything religious, but nonetheless incredible power over possibly the whole world, the whole universe. And they had a wheel, and that wheel gave them a lot of power. And this wheel had a lot of positive qualities, a lot of qualities that are used as analogous to the Dharma. So for instance, it was very sharp. So it's sharp in the sense it could cut can cut that which is harmful. So the wheel of Dharma, the Dharma, it can cut our negative emotions. So if we apply what the Buddha taught, certain aspects, certain techniques, it can help us to eliminate our negative emotions, cut our, in particular, our misapprehension of reality. That's one aspect. Also, like a wheel, it can go anywhere. Like it can go over hard rock, it can go over soft meadows, etc. It can just go anywhere. And so, likewise, the Dharma can be applied to good situations, easy situations, to difficult situations. We can apply this to anything, and we can apply this to our entire life. And also the Dharma can travel anywhere, and it's applicable to anyone, any human being, no matter where we are. This is universally, it's a kind of psychology that works for any human being or any living being that has the intelligence to understand it, has the ability to understand what it's all about. It's applicable to anyone. Anger, attachment, jealousy, they harm us. Love, compassion, understanding of reality, wisdom, they're beneficial. This is universally true. So therefore, the wheel can go anywhere in the sense that it can travel anywhere. And likewise, the Dharma can travel anywhere and actually be fruitful, be beneficial. So there are many different reasons for calling a wheel. So these are just some. So the Buddha taught those three teachings, gave those three teachings, and one of them is the second wheel, the wheel of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. So last time I said I was hesitant. I didn't like to use the word perfection of wisdom, but then Venerable George Churinoff, who did the translation, he used it all the way through, and it's too confusing if I use a different word than he did. So I will use the word perfection. But to give you, or to remind you what I said last time, it actually just means it's a wisdom that is different to ordinary wisdom in that it has transcended our ordinary intelligence, our ordinary understanding of reality, which is quite limited. So this is a much fuller, a much deeper understanding of reality. Usually the things, our wisdom, our understanding, we have some kind of wisdom, definitely. I don't know whether it can be called that, but yes, some understanding of what's going on. But it usually only helps us to gain short-term happiness, short-term well-being, while the wisdom we talk about here, this transcendent wisdom, the wisdom that has gone beyond, that is the perfection of wisdom, is a kind of wisdom that helps us to, well, remove the obstacles, all that's in the way of our mind to experience true and lasting satisfaction and happiness. So in that way, it's a kind of happiness, it's a kind of wisdom that ordinarily we don't have. And the teachings of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, they teach that kind of wisdom. So they teach how the methods to reach this wisdom. So this is in Buddhism very important, that it doesn't just talk about the states of mind that harm us and the states of mind that benefit us, but it gives very specific techniques how to bring about the minds that, or to develop the awarenesses, the minds that help us, and to remove the ones that harm us. But of course, it's important that this takes a lot of time. None of what is described here is easy. It takes time. But that's true, I guess, for everything in life. Whatever is worthwhile to do, what's worthwhile to achieve, usually takes time, takes patience, takes continuity, perseverance, and so forth. Now, with regard to the second turning of the wheel, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, I said last time, explicitly, when you look at the words, when you read the words, explicitly they deal with an understanding of how things really exist, reality, who am I, who are others, how do I exist, etc. So dealing with wisdom explicitly. Implicitly, they also teach compassion, love, teach the methods to becoming enlightened. And we'll talk about this, of course, as we go along. Now, of the different Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, there are many of them. Actually, they say only 17 were translated into Tibetan. 17. Okay, let me make sure that I didn't make a mistake. Yes, 17 were translated. Those 17 are called the 11 Mother Sutras and the 6 Son Sutras. That's just the name that is given to them because of what they teach. So the 11 Mother Sutras, they teach certain types of awareness, certain types of meditational states, if you like, that the Sun Sutras don't necessarily, that don't teach, not in the same complete way. So, of course, if you have longer sutras, shorter sutras, some contain more, some contain less. But altogether, Mother and Son Sutra, so these 11 plus 6, 17 sutras, they were the ones that were translated into Tibetan. And I guess at the time, people felt, okay, that was sufficient. To translate everything just wasn't necessary because they're just longer version of one another. So the longest sutra, I said it last time, is the one of 100,000 verses. Then you have one of 25,000, of 8,000. So those three are usually mentioned a lot because they are the basis for many, many commentaries given by other masters that followed the Buddha. They use those three mainly: the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 100,000 verses, the one in 25,000 verses, and the one in 8,000 verses. So the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra that has 100,000 verses, in Tibetan it has 12 volumes. So it's huge. In Tibetan, like it was translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan, 12 volumes. Then you have the one of medium length, 25,000 verses, it's 3 volumes. And then you got 8,000, and that is 1 volume. Now, if you look at the outlines of the Heart Sutra, if you look at the way it's set out here, so in the commentaries, different commentaries, of course, but first there are 3 outlines entitled the meaning of the title, the homage by the translators, and the explanation of the main body of the sutra. I said it last time, the meaning of the title, and here you have it now. It says literally in Tibetan, in the Indian language. It doesn't even say Sanskrit. There's a word for Sanskrit, but literally it says in the Indian language. And then you have Bhagavati Prajnaparamita Hridaya. I'm sure I mispronounced it. So that's the title. What it tells us is the 2 words in the center, Prajnaparamita, so the perfection of wisdom. Hridaya actually means the essence. But it actually has also the word, in Tibetan it's more obvious, or I understand it better from the Tibetan, it has the word Ningbo in Tibetan, it has the Tibetan underneath it, so the last word is Hridaya or Ningbo in Tibetan. Ning means heart, but Ningbo actually means essence, which is interesting because in other languages, we also use the word heart to talk about the essence of something. So the heart of the matter, for instance. Can you still see me? No, it's okay. So for instance, the heart of the matter. So basically the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra is a sutra that teaches the essence, teaches the heart of what is called the Prajnaparamita, or the perfection of wisdom. Bhagavati, the word Bhagavati, I used it also in English, put it in brackets. I use the word Bhagavati. There are 2 words, Bhagavan, Bhagavati. Basically, in Sanskrit, the word Bhagavan is a word that is used to refer to God in Hinduism, for instance. But it literally means the blessed one, the wealthy one, the fortunate one. It has those meanings. Bhagavati is just the female version of that. So to address someone who's blessed, who's wonderful, excellent, has great qualities. But here it means Prajnaparamita, which is a form of Buddha. It's kind of like as we have Buddha Shakyamuni, in the same way we have a manifestation. There's a manifestation of a Buddha called Bhagavati or Prajnaparamita. So this is just saying it's kind of more a symbolic depiction of wisdom. Wisdom in Buddhism is female. Some of you may know, probably most of you know, that wisdom is female, compassion and love are male. So just as in daily life, there's a sense male and female, you have to bring the 2 together for it to be complete, and of course to have offspring, to have children. In the same way, to have an awakened being, you need both wisdom and method. So the 2 coming together, male and female, and you have the offspring of Buddhas. But they say in particular, Prajnaparamita being a mother who gives rise, who's the mother of the different awakened beings. In that sense, sometimes also referred to as the mother of all the Buddhas, Prajnaparamita, so Bhagavati. So this sutra is also called the Bhagavati, the Prajnaparamita, this awakened being, the female Buddha Prajnaparamita, and this is the essence of what she teaches. Okay, that's the meaning of the title. Okay, so Bhagavati addresses this female Buddha, Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom. Hridaya means essence or heart, if you like. And that is also interesting, and it's in so many cultures we refer to myself, we touch the heart region, not the organ heart, that's to the left, but the middle of our chest, the center of our chest, which is a heart as it's here in this context. The organ heart, although it's also described in Tibetan, for instance, Ning, but Ning can also mean here in the center of your chest. That's also described as heart. And when people talk about their emotions, they point towards this area. When they talk about themselves, they touch this area, they point at that area. And of course, from a Buddhist point of view, the very subtle mind, our most essential mind is said to be located here. Okay, anyway, very interesting, very important kind of word, the heart, very important place from a Buddhist point of view. But to continue on, the next is the homage. Okay, I've done it last time, but just I feel like I've left out a few things. I want to kind of go through it one more time. So here, the homage. Last time, what I did, I read the homage that was in the Tibetan text that I have. I translated that. I said, paying homage to the three jewels. For some reason, I have a Tibetan text. It's like a little booklet that that's the one I have all my prayers in, and it's in there. It says I pay homage to the three jewels, and that's what I said last time, but that is not the actual homage. The actual homage is homage to the perfection of wisdom, the Bhagavati, again, to the Blessed One, paying homage to this particular awakened being, Prajnaparamita. And that's by the translator. So why is this in there? Why is the meaning of the title? It's got nothing to do with the sutra as such, because it's not part of the sutra yet. But number one, when it says the Indian language and the Tibetan language, well, it's there. Why? In order to be aware, this is a translation from the original Sanskrit. Indian language here means Sanskrit. It was translated from the Indian language, and also to remember the translators. It's really beautiful that there is a lot of emotions, and I spoke about this last time, that Buddhism is really just a form of psychology. A form of psychology in the sense it offers techniques to get to know our own mind, but also techniques to develop positive states of mind and to reduce and eventually eliminate negative, harmful states of mind that causes problems and sufferings. So one of those states of mind that are really important is gratitude. Gratitude is such a beautiful type of mind. And many of the sutras give us the opportunity to generate those types of mind. So here, when it says the homage by the translators and the meaning of the title, so the title itself plus the homage by the translators, that gives us the opportunity to practice generosity, to just take that moment to remember there were these incredible people, Tibetans, at the time when Buddhism went from India to Tibet. Around the 7th, 8th century, that's when Buddhism, relatively late, much after the Chinese, the Thai, like these different countries where we find Buddhism nowadays as being part of being their main religion, actually Buddhism came very, very late, relatively late to Tibet. The advantage was that many of the teachings that were previously not widely taught were in the 7th and 8th century widely taught, and all of them brought to Tibet. While not like the tantric teachings, for instance, they did not make it to Thailand, to Burma, etc. So a very extensive version of the Dharma that was previously taught in secret that had now become more mainstream, it came all the way, it went to Tibet. And so it didn't go to Tibet like nowadays via boat and boat anyway, how would you go there? But plane, etc. That was impossible. No, it was brought there by these incredible beings, who, many of them died. I mean, there are stories of 108 something translators were sent to India to translate these texts, to learn, of course, about them, their meaning, to get an understand what it's all about, really to not just understand the words, but to understand the meaning, to get an experience themselves by relying on these incredible teachers. And then a handful of them actually surviving, being killed on the way to India, being killed while in India, having was horrible diseases that, of course, they had no their immune system wasn't able to cope with the diseases that they had in India, because India being so hot, Tibet being such a cold place. So you can imagine at the time then, in the 7th, 8th century, many people didn't survive. Many of the translators didn't survive. So it was really like risking their own life to take the teachings, translate them, and bring them to Tibet. And if the Dharma, the Tibetan Buddhism as we know it now, these complete teachings, Hinayana, Mahayana, foundational teachings, universal teachings, plus the tantric teachings, if those translators hadn't done what they've done, they would be non-existent, because they disappeared from India. In the same way they didn't make it to other countries. Of course, they made it in a different way, but if we don't have a strong connection with the way the other teachings are set forth, well, we wouldn't be able to benefit from them. So the translators are really, really important. And this is usually said, take a moment to just be grateful. Of course, being grateful to the Buddha, to Prajnaparamita, of course, but also to the translators at the time, who did an amazing job translating everything. So you remember I said, this is kind of like a meditation. It's a meditation guide. And all those just a few words, you start with a devotional kind of mind that is very beneficial. It inspires us, it calms us, it makes us happy. So state of mind such as devotion is a positive state of mind. It lifts us up. So like I said, psychology in the sense, these states of mind, if you're deep down, you're depressed, and then read the Heart Sutra and think of these great beings, the Buddha, the perfection of wisdom, those translators, all the hardships they went through, incredible. I mean, living their lives like that in order to bring us the teachings. Then there's devotion towards the Buddha, there's gratitude, and those are positive states of mind that can help us, well, in a very profound way. And of course, I think you're all aware of gratitude, the importance of gratitude for everything we have in general, but here in particular for this situation. All right. And then the third point is the explanation of the main body of the sutra. Okay. So this sutra, trying to think, I'm bringing in other things. I try not to forget. There's quite a few other things about them. It has many commentaries. Of course, it needs to be explained. Here we're following a particular commentary because it was taught so long ago. It was delivered so long ago. And so usually they talk about 21 Indian commentaries. Many of them weren't translated into Tibetan. Many of them are no longer existent. But those were the commentaries. They helped us to decipher what was taught in this particular sutra. So 17 sutras were translated into Tibetan, and then there are 21 Indian commentaries on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, not specifically the Heart Sutra, but the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras in general. And as I said, the Heart Sutra is one of those Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. Okay. All right, so meaning of the title, Homage by the Translators. Now the actual sutra. What is the actual sutra? So last time I used a different kind of, handout. It had the common prologue, but we can leave that, but it had the common prologue. So it's really just saying a common explanation of the background of the sutra. That's what it starts off with. First there's a common prologue and then an uncommon prologue. Let me check the time. Oh, it's already 1 hour. Okay. Whoops, 1 hour. How did it go that fast? Anyways, yeah, so, okay, so just that much, and I'll leave it very soon. So there's the common prologue, and so the common explanation of the background of the sutra, as I said last time, it just explains what's going on. What is going on? Well, first of all, it talks about who's the speaker of the sutra. As you see, this passage describes the following. So who's the speaker of the sutra? Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan. So although it's Ananda who's actually going through what he has heard, but the speaker is officially the Buddha. The Buddha is made responsible, if you like, for what is taught here. And I'll say a little more about this later. So thus did I hear at one time. And here also, what this common prologue or the common explanation of the background, common in the sense it's obvious to everyone present, what it tells us is the time the sutra was spoken. So at the time when the Buddha was in this place on Mass Vulture's Mountain. Oh, I just remembered to also tell you something. I made a mistake last time. I went through like, what does it say in Tibetan? It says Chagu Pumboji. In Tibetan, it says aggregate vulture mountain. It doesn't actually literally say mass, but there's this word pumpo, which is usually like an aggregation of something. So some people, and I said it was just vulture, but I didn't think of the word pumpo. But no, it's actually mass vulture mountain, or a mountain where vultures amass, or some people translate it as peak, right? Not that important, but it was a particular mountain that the Buddha was at the time. So that gives the time, because apparently there's different interpretation, but some people say the Buddha traveled from Vaishali to this place, and that was around the age of 57. So from that, you can know the time. And then the place, of course, Mass Vulture's Mountain. So whichever translation you use for the word Chagupumburila. So this particular mountain, I discussed why the vultures, I talked about this last time. But anyways, the name of this mountain in Rajgriha, which is near Bodhgaya, near the place where the Buddha attained full enlightenment. And then the audience, the sutra, to whom the sutra was spoken. So a great community of monks and nuns, and a great community of bodhisattvas. So I said earlier last time, in the English translation, it only says a great community of monks. Wait, let me just make more light. So a great community of monks, but that's because in Tibetan the word is gindun, which can be gender neutral. It can be gender neutral, while in English, well, you say either monk or nun or ordained person, but that would sound weird. But I've added a great community of monks and nuns, and then a great community of bodhisattvas. And so you may wonder, why is that in there? And then the next part, the uncommon prologue, it talks about the Bhagavan being in this concentration, and I say a little bit more about it. But there's a reason for it, because again, everything serves a purpose in our meditation. So initially generate devotion, hearing the name of the sutra, being associated with the female Buddha. Next, gratitude, of course, to the Buddha himself, but also to the translators. Next, you do visualization. You visualize yourself to be in that place. Now, visualization is also a great part of Buddhist meditation. In modern psychology, I did a little bit of research on that. I don't know anything about it, but just the little reading I did, it can be also described creative visualization. So not some random, just daydreaming kind of visualization, but creative in the sense, controlled visualization. And if you do some reading on it, it's very easy to find it online, creative visualization. It talks about experiential psychology, that they put a lot of emphasis on this, saying how beneficial it is in so many ways. It's physically important, physically helpful, mentally helpful. I just cut out this. I just copied this one paragraph, but there's loads on it. Like, scientific studies have shown the positive effects of creative visualization on health, immunity, stress, healing, and pain management. It can improve many facets of life, from athletic ability to cognitive performance to self-esteem to goal achievement, etc. So, of course, we've heard about this idea of visualizing, like an athlete visualizing to be able to do certain movements and then being able to do so. What I also read was very interesting. If you visualize you're doing certain exercises, they've shown that people visualizing to do an exercise actually causes your muscles to grow. It's hard to believe, but yeah, they say it's like you have a 30% of muscle growth in comparison to a person who fully actually exercises. So there's some very fascinating research on the, yeah, you can just sit at home, gyms are closed, you can just visualize your, and never mind. So basically, it has also a great physical effect. It shows the power of the mind, but here in particular, it's said to visualize yourself to be in that place, to be in this particular place. And that, it doesn't say that in the commentaries, but it's just, why else would it be there? Because it is actually meant to be a kind of meditation. Like, actually every prayer in Buddhism is meant to be a kind of meditation, something you reflect upon. So to visualize you're in this peaceful place at a time in India when there were still lots of trees, the environment was unharmed, was unaffected by human life to a great degree. And there was this amazing being called the Buddha. He was there, actually teaching in person, together with a great community of practitioners, of ordained people, non-ordained people, and of course a great community of these great bodhisattvas all being present. So if you really put yourself into that situation, you visualize that, I think it can affect you much greater than if you just read the words and you don't have that aspect. So to really visualize you're in that place. And for a lot of people, hearing another person actually speak is so much more effective. And if you can't have that because, well, obviously Buddha Shakyamuni is no longer around, but you could visualize yourself being in that place. And if you understand a little bit about the advantages of creative visualization, of course, beneficial creative, you could also visualize robbing a bank, but I'm not talking about that. But positive kind of visualizations, well, then that may be an inspiration to actually do it yourself. So actually my goal was to do this visualization with you, to just spend a moment, all of us together. And of course, we won't take it from there, but maybe just do it together, do a visualization where you visualize yourself to be in that place, and possibly to feel inspired by such a great being such as the Buddha. And you could also visualize your own teacher being, if you have a spiritual teacher, someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whoever is your spiritual teacher, or His Holiness the Karmapa, and so forth. There's so many great lamas still around who were actually in essence like the Buddha. So it may even add something to it if you visualize the Buddha in the space in front of you, teaching there, who is of one nature with your own teacher. So if you want to do this together, just a few moments, I'll guide you through it. And with that, I'll finish for today. I'm sorry for saying a few things again from last time, but I felt it was important also now with these outlines. And of course, I'll continue next time, continue with the text. So let's do this meditation together. Just visualize yourself to be in that place. Okay. So just spend a moment focusing on your breathing to let go of any disruptive thoughts. And now think that you're not in your room. You're not in a lockdown situation. But you're at Vulture's Peak Mountain in the presence of the Buddha, the fully awakened Buddha. Who's the essence of wisdom and love and compassion. An inspiration to us. Since the Buddha shows us that we can all reach such an awakened state. Because the essence of our mind is like the essence of the Buddha's mind. Which is also clear by the great beings who surround us. The Sangha. Ordained and lay. Great bodhisattvas. And again, generate a sense of joy and gratitude for the teachings they've left behind. Okay. Well, since we're not much further with the sutra, next time, once we get further, we'll then go further through this meditation. And we'll start also next time. I think slowly we can do the whole sutra. I don't know whether next time or whether I use another verse. I cite another, or I give you another verse. That's just a short version for the Perfectional Wisdom Sutra or for the Heart Sutra. I'll see what I'll do next time. But anyway, hopefully that gives you some sense of the meditations you can do. And if we have time, what time is it now? Oh, 10 minutes. If there's any question, you could raise your hand virtually. And if there aren't any, like Tomer suggested, you could write it down, or we could also maybe use the WhatsApp group. Also invite other people to answer the questions, so maybe there's a discussion or something if anyone is interested. Okay. Norgun. Is that a Tibetan name? Norgun. Okay. Share. Are there any questions? More questions? Can you elaborate on how do I do that? Here. Can we use the same link to access the next week? This is my first time. Can you elaborate on how to incorporate this into our daily practice? Okay. How to do, yes, most important question. Of course, that's the whole point of it. I mean, the Heart Sutra is not just recited for the sake of it, but of course to make it a practice. So we only started with it. One thing, of course, is to recite it, but to do the visualizations as we go through it. So right now, we've basically just went through the title and the homage by the translators and talked about generating joy in what they've done for us, gratitude. Then we did this visualization, being in the presence of the Buddha, the beings around there, really visualizing ourselves to be in that place. But of course, what's most important is then first there's a question asked and then the answer. So the answer, what Avalokiteshvara says, inspired by the Buddha, so he's really reflecting what the Buddha says, that is then the main teaching, and that gives you the opportunity to meditate on emptiness, or meditate on how does my body, form is empty. Form just means the body, my body, your body. How does it exist? Yeah, and of course, right now we haven't gone through all the details, but hopefully as we go on, and next time I'm pretty confident I can start talking more about how does the body exist, how do phenomena exist, to actually get more into selflessness and emptiness. So then as we go along, well, you can just integrate whatever you've learned. Are these birds eating living or dead meat? No. Ale, these birds, no. The vultures, here that are described here, I said it last time, there are different reasons for calling it Mass Vulture's Mountain. Some say it's just the mountain looked like a vulture. Some say that some bodhisattvas, they manifested in the form of vultures, which I don't know why they did that. I like the explanation that it just looked like a vulture, but I don't know. It's just the name. It's just the name of it. So even if there were vultures present, I don't think they were devouring meat or anything at that point. So maybe the word vulture is not a bird that we associate with, I don't know, something positive as such. But yeah, it's in the end, it's just the name of the bird. And what's most name of the place. But I think what's most important is the presence of course, the Buddha, those monks, and not only those practitioners, not just monks and nuns, but also the great bodhisattvas. Okay. Any other question? No? Okay. All right. Maya, I can see your hand. You're right there. Okay. All right. So I guess it's 23 minutes. It gives us time to do a little bit of meditation, to do another meditation just on love and compassion by way of dedicating. If you have a question after, well, I guess there's not much time. We have these dedication prayers that, Shir, if you could bring them up on the screen. And then before we dedicate, to put the mind in the right kind of frame, set the right kind of frame of mind to dedicate whatever positive energy we've accumulated or positive potential we've created here all together, to again reflect that, of course, we're only in the beginning of this sutra, but whatever we've learned today, whatever meditation we've done today as a group, although in different parts of the world, but may this become a cause for all of us to get to know our mind better, to become more mindful of our own mind, of our own emotions, of our thoughts, so that this becomes an opportunity to lessen the negative states of mind, those that are caused by our misapprehension of reality. So may that all this become a cause for us to remove the misapprehension of reality, replace it with wisdom, and a wisdom and understanding of how I and others exist, which then brings forth strong emotions, beneficial emotions such as compassion, love, true care for others, true acceptance of myself and others, affection, and so forth. Of course, with a goal to eventually reach the fully awakened state of a Buddha, not just for my own benefit, but for the welfare of all sentient beings. No, that's not the right prayer. No, if you can go a little further. No mandala, no. The dedication, if you scroll further, no. Okay, dedication, there it is. Oops, that's not in English. Is this somewhere in here? Yeah, there it is, those, okay. So here, 4 prayers, we do the 4 prayers together. So whatever I said before, it's now expressed with these words. So through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And then it goes on to say, just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue, but the dedication praised as the best by the victorious ones, thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. And if we can add Shantideva's dedication prayer, share, you have it in English? Oh, there are a lot of questions now, okay. All right, okay. Yes, so this is a beautiful prayer, in particular for our thoughts to reach out to other sentient beings, to generate these wishes, and therefore becoming the cause for our setting our mind to go into that direction, so that we may be able to be of greater benefit to others. So let's recite this prayer together. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the hopeless find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all the medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and the people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, so we made it in time. Okay, well, thank you very much for getting together on Zoom. There seems to be no distance from Germany to Israel. It's beautiful. I've gone through some of your pictures. I've seen some faces that I know. It's lovely to see everyone. So please be well, be safe. And I see you again on Sunday next week. And don't forget your homework to recite the Heart Sutra every morning. And you may use Lama Zopa Rinpoche's retreat instructions and see whether there's something that Rinpoche says to integrate into your meditation session. But most important is to take the aspects of whatever you've learned and actually do a meditation on that while reciting the sutra. Okay, shalom, take care, bye-bye. Thank you, Shir. Okay. Hmm.